There are over 100,000 people who immigrate to New Zealand every year with the intention to make New Zealand their home, leaving behind everything they know as normal day-to-day life and having to learn new ways of doing things, new norms, new cultures, and different values. There are many people who struggle with this transition and find it challenging to adjust and settle, so they can call and make New Zealand their home. The purpose of this podcast is for me to share my journey and our challenges with the hope that you can learn from me and my family and have a softer landing. There will be good days and bad days, but with time, more good days. I believe we have made the right choice for our family. I want to try and help you do the same, but hopefully with a softer landing. This is Soft Landing, and I am your host, Brett Corlett.
Welcome to this podcast, designed for anyone thinking about, preparing for, or who has just immigrated to New Zealand. Subscribe now so you never miss an episode. Drawing from his personal experience, this series will guide you through the process of preparing for your move and helping you navigate the challenges of immigration.
Hello everyone, I want to welcome those back that have been listening to me regularly. So thank you for joining me again on this podcast that I'm going to be going through today. And for those of you that haven't listened to me before, welcome. But I also wanted to ask you, please go back to episode number 1 if you can. I have tried to share my whole journey in chronological order. So it'll be really awesome if you listen from episode 1. Not only is it in chronological order, but it gives you a good understanding of who I am and why I'm doing this and what's the whole reason behind this and why should you even listen to me, and some of the tips and information that I'm sharing. So please go back to episode 1 if you haven't listened to me before. Otherwise, today's podcast, what I'm going to go and talk through is the healthcare system in New Zealand. So I know there's a lot of questions on a lot of the social media groups that I'm part of for immigrants to New Zealand. And a big hot topic and question is always around, how does the healthcare system work? There's so many, there's talk of how bad it is. There's talk of how costly it is, how it doesn't work. We don't have enough doctors. So there's a lot of negativity, but maybe in social media and news, there's always, everybody clings to the negative side of it. But there's also just the practical of that. How do I get registered? How do I make sure that I'm covered and I get the medical treatment that I need for me and my family? So really today is going to be all about healthcare and the healthcare system and the practicality of actually getting signed up and what we've learned over the 2 and a bit years of being here around the healthcare system. Before I get into the practical side of it, I want to also just share a little bit about me and my history, and my medical history. So back in 2019, when I was still back in South Africa, I was shocked and found out, and it was a huge surprise to me, I was diagnosed with cancer. So since 2019, I've really had a lot to do with medical procedures and doctors and specialists, and it's become a big part of my life. And maybe it's as you get older, you also get more and more involved in doctors, and things happen, and your body, maybe it just gets old and things break, and you just naturally have to see doctors more. I don't know. Or there could be the counter to that. You got to make sure you keep yourself healthy so that it doesn't happen, so you can last longer. And there's all truth in all of that. And I promise you, I was definitely one of those that I thought I was doing the right thing, and I thought I was trying to be healthy. I've never smoked in my life. I've never taken drugs. I've never drank a hell of a lot. I was gymming. I was cycling. And I mean, when I was cycling, I was doing road cycling where I was doing like 60, 100 Ks a week cycling. I was entering competitions like the 94.7, and I thought I was healthy, doing spinning and gym and everything like that. And to be diagnosed with cancer, and the particular cancer I got was testicular cancer, it's like hitting a brick wall. It's like, what? How does that? It just doesn't match. I shouldn't. Why me? Why is this happening? So that was a difficult thing to overcome in itself. And I'm really not going to go down a rabbit hole, or try not to, in this podcast, trying to talk to you about, maybe that's another podcast, is how that affected my thinking and my life, and how it's changed a lot of my thinking and what's important and what's not. If there's anything, cancer is definitely, it's made me rethink a lot of things that I thought were important. And it's really made me realize that, maybe the trajectory I was on and what I thought was important, what was something that I needed to prioritize, was not necessarily right. So I'm trying to think about it now, being just over 5 years later, maybe it was a good thing, because it's also taught me that, family is actually what was more important to me. And it's one of the big reasons why we've ended up in New Zealand, is we've realized that, I need to worry more about making memories with my kids and my family and being around and having that balance in life. Back in South Africa, before I got diagnosed, I had a heavy push towards career and growing your career and becoming an executive and making money and investing in property. And I got to make enough money and get enough stuff to be able to look after my family, and time will come for me to be there for them. But maybe if I didn't get the cancer, maybe, yeah, I might have physically been around and not passed away, but maybe I would have missed that gap in my kids' lives to actually be present and be around. So anyway, like I say, I progress. I know I will digress. I don't want this one to be about a whole philosophical side of how cancer's changed my life, but I just really wanted you to understand that from 2019 being diagnosed with cancer, it meant getting very involved with doctors, with oncologists and radiologists and GPs and blood tests and X-rays and MRIs. And oh man, the amount of tests and blood tests and doctors prodding, probing and doing over the years, from then onwards, became a lot. And it wasn't only the cancer, because I went for regular screening after we finally got the cancer out and everything like that, and post the radiation and everything. You do your regular checks and go into surveillance. The blood test started picking up something like, I got diagnosed with celiac disease, which is just, it's a gluten intolerance. On top of everything else that I was going through, it was like, oh really? Now you're going to take away the good food that I really love eating, because that's a bad thing. And it just all compounds. But what it meant was more doctors and more tests and whatever else. And that was all back in South Africa. And luckily we were blessed, and I had a good medical system. When we say medical system, medical aid, I had private medical insurance, so we were one of the lucky few that everything was covered. So financial wasn't a struggle for us. It was more just everything else that you had to go through. But why I'm also telling you the story, and I promise you, I will get back on track and finally bring it to the relevance of New Zealand and the New Zealand healthcare, is the first thing I wanted to share is, and the reason for sharing this is, I've had cancer. Okay, yes, I beat cancer, but I've got a medical history that's not great. But yet, we were still able to come to New Zealand as a family, with me being the primary candidate getting across here, even although I had cancer. So, for those of you that have had dreaded diseases or anything like that, and are still worried and thinking maybe, oh, I'll never be considered, don't let that hold you back. There is still possibilities. And I know there'll be a lot of hoops to jump through. Obviously, if you're in the middle of your treatment and you're still at the stage where you haven't even got to surveillance, or your medical condition is such that you're going to be a real burden on the state here in New Zealand, then probably you won't be able to come through. But if you can beat that and get to a point just because of your actual history and pre-existing conditions, don't write it off that it's not an opportunity for you. If you're on that green list and you are a skill and it's they need you here, you can still get across. Anyway, I digress again. Just trying to bring you back and sharing a little bit with my cancer, and how that even with that history, I was able to get here with our family. So let's move forward a little bit, a few years. So I've kicked cancer's butt. We've overcome it. I've gone through the surveillance. We're probably, I think they say with cancer, you've got to get through 5 years. And once you've post going through surveillance for 5 years, then you've beat it, okay? Because then the likelihood of it coming back is like really, really, really low. And you can get back to normal life. And what I mean by normal life is, in the first 5 years of having cancer, you got regular blood tests, you got regular X-rays or MRIs or sonar scans or doctor's visits and etc. You're doing that on a regular basis, so they're trying to see that the cancer hasn't come back. So your life is a lot around doctors. But post 5 years, you go back to normal, going back to your regular yearly check just with your GP, and you've beat it. So that's the stage I'm at. But when we were coming across to New Zealand, I was probably only in year 4. So I wasn't quite year 3, year 4. I don't know. I was year 3 or year 4 under surveillance. So I wasn't quite at the end of that 5-year yet. So what that entailed was I would still need to have a lot of those tests and everything done here. I would still need an oncologist assigned to me. I would still need to make sure, depending on how New Zealand handles it with their oncologists and what they do with the regular screening, back in South Africa, it meant X-rays and sonars. Here, it meant MRIs. I would still need to get all of those tests done. And then it would be back in South Africa, I had a medical aid, which was Discovery, which covered all of this. Now coming across to New Zealand, would that be covered? Would I be able to get onto a private medical aid, and would they cover that? So I can already answer that. Coming over to New Zealand, when you give all your pre-existing conditions and history, the first thing that the private medical said is, okay, well, those pre-existing conditions, the testicular cancer, whatever, won't be covered straight off the bat. You'd have to stay on a particular package of private insurance, so the top package usually, for X period of time. So they told me for a minimum of 3 years before they would cover any pre-existing conditions. So that would mean for the first 3 years of being here, I would need to go through the state system. I need to go through the public healthcare system to be able to treat me for all of my surveillance. So it gave me a good exposure and first-hand experience of what it was like to work through the public sector. So that's why I wanted to just give you a bit of this history to give you an understanding of why I'm talking to this. I can talk to you in my personal experience of coming across to New Zealand, not only having to go to normal GPs and dental and optometry and everything, and we'll talk about that with a family of 4, so we've got kids and everything, so I'll talk to that as well, is I also myself had to go through the system, public system, of getting care for what was surveillance for my cancer treatment. So getting an oncologist through public sector, going through MRIs through public sector, getting blood tests through public sector. And then while doing all of that, even the blood tests picked up where I potentially, I know, crazy, but it happens when the doctors, you're like a pin cushion where they're testing you regularly. Any little thing is they always want to dig into. So one of the blood tests here, when I first got here in my first year, they showed some funny anomaly that they wanted to check out. It could have potentially meant cancer of your colon. So it meant I had to go for tests for that. So I had to go for a colonoscopy and get that checked out as well. So you're constantly on the alert checking all of this. So my original cancer treatment and post surveillance treatment was all through public sector here because it was pre-existing. Although I did get onto a private insurance, it would cover anything that wasn't pre-existing. So colon cancer wouldn't be related to the current cancer, so it was covered under private. So I can also talk through how I had to go through the colonoscopy and all of that specialist treatment, but under private care versus what I was going for my pre-existing cancer under public care. So I can talk through all of that. I'm going to talk through a little bit around how we got registered as a family and what we had to do to get registered, and how I've had ACC claims. So I'll talk to you about ACC, which is the Accident Compensation Corporation, which is kind of like the insurance fund, public fund that everybody pays into here in New Zealand. So if anything accidental happens, like you've been in a car accident, or you hurt yourself in the gym, or you hurt yourself on walking down the road, or whatever else, you can actually put in a claim that the ACC covers the cost of any injuries or accidental injuries that have happened. So I'll talk you through the ACC claims that we've done. So my son got hurt, and we've done an ACC claim for him when he was at school. I've had an injury at the gym, which I also was shocked to believe was actually covered by ACC. So I'll talk you through that process of getting that done. So I'll just give you some practical experiences of what we've dealt with over the last 2.5 years with New Zealand healthcare. I'm just trying to give you a little bit of context so you can try and understand where I'm coming from and what my experiences are and why I can share all of this. Some of you might be thinking, geez, and he's actually still alive and still kicking with so much going on. But anyway, let's start at the beginning. So the first thing that you would want to do is when you get across to New Zealand, you're going to want to register with a GP. So in a lot of my other podcasts, I've told you how you choose an area that you're going to be living in, your rental, your schooling, and all of that. So that's all 100% valid. But what you also want to do is once you settle in an area and you found your rental and where your family is going to settle, you've got to start finding a GP in your area, and you've got to register with that GP. Now, when you register with a GP here, you'll find in New Zealand, a lot of the stuff that they do is not paper-based anymore. They try and move away from paper. They're going digital. So a lot of the registrations and stuff all happens online. It happens with apps. They've got apps for a lot of things here, and I'll talk through that a little bit more in the healthcare way of doing things, or our experience with it here. But first thing is registering with a GP. When you've got to register with a GP, find the GP in your area that you want to go to. Generally, you can go to their website and they usually send you a link where you can start uploading information that you need to register. What they will also do is, because it's all online, they start prompting you and saying if you actually even qualify to be registered at that GP to be covered by the national healthcare system. So what happens is when you're registering, you get something called an NHI number. So your NHI number is specific to you as an individual in New Zealand, and everybody gets their own individual NHI number. So your kids will get their own individual one, you get your own individual one, but that's how they track, and all medical and anything that claims happens to you, it all goes against your NHI number. Now, with moving across New Zealand, there's certain criteria and certain visas and certain people that will qualify for state-funded care. So you'll be covered by state. So if you are a permanent resident or residence, you're covered. If you're a citizen, you're covered. Certain work visas where you're here for more than 2 years, you're covered. Look, I'm not the expert on that, so I'm not going to tell you what is and isn't covered. But when you start registering with your local GP, they will check if you are covered and you meet the relevant criteria to be covered by state cover. It doesn't mean you can't go to a GP if you don't have the cover. It just means you would have to pay. So it would cost you, and you'd pay the full price for whatever the casual care would be at that GP. But if you wanted to be covered by the state or subsidized by the state, you would need to get registered with your NHI number, and that you do through going to your local GP that you're going to register with. Another thing you've got to remember is in New Zealand, we found that they are struggling with getting enough doctors and enough specialists in a lot of different areas. So GPs are under a lot of strain, and medical centers are under a lot of strain, where they got more people than what they can actually cater for in a lot of different areas. So I'll give you an example, the area I'm staying in at the moment and the medical center that we registered with as a family 2.5 years ago. If we go onto their website and we want to try and register for those GPs in our area now, they've actually got a statement that says at the moment they're closed for registrations. So they're full. They can't take more registrations. So you also got to be careful with the area that you're in. Start finding a doctor that you can register with sooner than later. Don't leave it too long, because it can be that potentially the GP you're trying to register for is not available. They're not taking registration. So you may need to find another one that may be a little bit more out of the way, but you have to get registered and you have to get your NHI number. So just make sure you do spend a little bit of time in trying to get that done. It is all done online. It's done by the app. You follow the prompts. They ask you all the relevant questions. You have to upload the relevant information. So it could be proof of address, it could be your passport, it could be your visas. So you got to upload a lot of that information to get registered. The actual registering for your GP and doing everything online, it does take a few days for them to get back to you and to get your NHI number and get everything for each individual in your family that you're registered with. So rather do it sooner than later. What it will mean is that every time that you go to the doctor, it will be one, you can see that doctor, you are registered with an NHI number, but it would also mean certain medications are now covered, certain procedures, whatever, certain things are covered with state and what's not. I'm not going to go into the detail of what is and what isn't as per se, because I'm not the expert on all of that. I'll just tell you in my experience. But first thing is to get registered with the doctors. What you will know, or what we've learned, is that your kids with the GPs, so any child that is 14 years or younger, will be 100% covered by the National Health Service, also known as Te Whatu Ora here. So there will be no charge for you to take your kids to the GP if they are 14 years or younger once you're registered. So make sure that you're registered. I don't know if you had to go to a doctor and you weren't registered yet, whether you'd have to pay or not for a child to see them. I'm not sure. We weren't in that situation. What we did in the first 2 weeks of being here is we did register with a doctor. So we made sure we got that NHI number quickly and that we were covered by state for our children and everything on the visas and everything that we had. So I can't answer that question, but I do know once you are registered that your kids 14 years and younger are covered by the doctors. What it also means is when you go and get certain scripts from your doctor, so you see your doctor and he's prescribes XYZ, you go to the pharmacy and collect that. There are a lot of medications that are covered by the state. As it is today, you do have a $5 fee for any script that is covered by the state. So your doctor will tell you to go get XYZ medications that are covered by the state, but you will still pay a $5 levy for that. That said, there are certain medications that are not covered by state. So if they're not covered by state, you'd have to pay out your pocket. unless you got a private medical aid that can cover some of those as well, which covers the gap. But if you don't, be prepared to pay out of your pocket for those sort of things as well. Once you're registered with your doctor and you've got your NHI number and you've done that all online, another thing to remember is that it doesn't mean that you are registered for dental cover by the state, because dental is not covered by the state for adults, but for any child 18 years or younger, they are covered for dental. But again, just like you register for your GP in your area and you do that online, you also have to go and register for dental for your children. So you would need to go to, I think it is called, what is it called? Dental, it's ARDS. So I think it's, oh yes, okay, so let me just remember now. ARDS was for us because we were in Auckland. So I think that was the Auckland registration for dental services. So depending on what area you end up in New Zealand, you might just need to do a little bit of research, but just know, over and above registering for a GP in your area, you also need to go consider, if you've got children under the age of 18, you would want to register them for dental as well, because their dental will be covered. And when I say their dental will be covered, it'll be like normal regular checkups with their dental, a filling to be done or whatever, that'll be covered for dental. But if they needed like braces, orthodontry, that won't be covered. Okay, that's over and above, and that's when you'd need to either pay for it out of pocket, or you would need private medical to help with that. But even the private medical here doesn't help a lot when it comes to dental. They cap it at a certain amount, and generally it's still not even enough if you wanted to go for braces and orthodontistry and stuff like that for your kids. So that can even be a challenge. But registering for the GP, yes, first thing, registering for your dental for your kids, so 18 years and younger, you need to get that done as well. Maybe another thing to also mention is just optometry. Not a lot of that is covered 100% as well, so sometimes that's also a gap that you want to look at with your private cover. So for example, like my wife, she needs to go get glasses. I know that cost her $500 just for a set of glasses, reading glasses. That was covered by private medical, not by state. So if we didn't have the private, that was something she would have had to pay out of pocket. Maybe just also another reference for the dental. My wife had to go get a filling as well. I know that cost her 200 and something odd dollars to get a filling done. Again, that wouldn't have been covered because she's over 18 and wouldn't be covered by state. She'd have to pay that out of pocket. But we did have private medical, so she got that covered under private medical. I think on the top plan that we are with, the private medical company we're with is Southern Cross. Each adult, I think it's $700 a year of dental treatment. But you'll have to talk to the different private medical firms that you sign up with, and they'll tell you the breakdown and what you're covered for. But just to get some sort of idea of cost, just for one filling for my wife, $200, and that was recently now in 2025. And then also she got reading glasses this year, so that was $500, just as a guide of what that costs. Just another point to remember on the dental when you register your kids, that actually took quite a while to go through when my wife registered the kids with the dental services here in Auckland. I think it took about 6 months before they got back to us and said, oh, okay, you've got your 2 kids, you want them registered. These are the list of dental practices in the area near you that you can now go register your kids with for dental care so that it is covered. Okay, so just bear that in mind. That did take a little while to get covered with the dental care. The GP, though, that didn't take as long. It's just more finding a GP that is available for registrations in your area, but it took a few days to be able to get the GP registered for not only the kids, but the whole family. So just keep that in mind with timelines and turnaround and getting that registered. So once you've actually you've enrolled the family in the GP somewhere nearby, what's important is you do these 2 things. You want to be registered for a GP in the area that you're in, because first thing is, if you needed to see a specialist or anything here, back in South Africa, one of the things I could do is I could approach a specialist directly, contact them or their offices and say, hey, I'd like to see whichever specialist, and make an appointment, and my medical cover, private medical would even cover that, whatever else. So that would be fine. Whereas here, everything generally gets channeled through your GP. You have to go see your GP first. So that's why it's important to get registered with a GP. And then the GP, once they've consulted and seen with you, if you need to be a specialist, they refer you to a specialist. So if I give the example of me with my cancer, I first had to go register with the GP near where we were staying. I first had to go and meet with that GP, and then he would write up all my history and everything, and then he referred me to a state oncologist who then I had to wait for an appointment with. So, and even when I went for the colonoscopy as well, and even although that was paid for by private, it was still a specialist. It's still I had to go to my GP first, who first had to refer me to the colon. Oh, I don't know, the doctor that did the specialist that did the colonoscopy or whatever had to refer me to him before I could actually go meet with him, and etc. Even although it was paid under private. So GP is definitely your entry point, and you need to get registered. What we've also found here with the GPs is they do a lot more than what we were used to back home. So they do a lot more tests, a lot more consulting. Like the doctor would be more general and just if you're sick or whatever else, and they do that. But here they'll go that one step further, also with the help of the nurses here. So it is important to get registered, and it's something you've got to get used to, that the GPs do a lot more here. I'm trying to think of an example of what they do with a lot more. Maybe, I don't know. I don't know enough about it. I wish my wife was here helping with the podcast, but like I know with women's health and everything like that, generally, if you wanted to go to a gynecologist and get certain things done and whatever else, I don't know, you would go to the gynae for a lot of extra stuff and healthcare and checks and whatever else that get done. But I know here the GP will do some of that with the help of nurses before they actually send you to a specialist. So just do your homework a little bit and seeing what the GPs cover. But rule of thumb, if you get registered with your GP first, you have to go see your GP first. They will kind of guide you through what they cover and what they will do versus when they send you to a specialist. And the only way to get to the specialist, be it state or be it private, is you have to go to your GP first, who then refers you. Maybe another point to also remember with your GPs here, which we had to get our mind around, is the GPs, they seem to underprescribe. Okay, so back home, if your kids were sick or you were sick or whatever else, you'd go see a GP and they'd give you antibiotics and give you all the different drugs that you need or medication that you need to get healthy. And they prescribe tons and get it all done and get you fixed and sorted out. Whereas here they seem to be a little bit more, not reluctant, but cautious. They'll hold back. They won't just give you antibiotics straight off the bat, and they'll probably just give you painkillers that are like, in South Africa we'd say Panados, but it's what do you call it? Panamol or whatever here is the equivalent, but it's just paracetamol. So they'll just give you good old paracetamol. They won't go and give you ibuprofen and all the really good stuff that you would want back home. They won't naturally or just straight jump to prescribing that. They'll underprescribe. So I think it's important when you get here to remember that if you go to your GP, yes, that's your entry point, but advocate for yourself and your family. Speak up. You've got to be able to tell them, hey, I don't just want paracetamol. I need something a little bit stronger than that. Or I found back home, my doctors would generally go and they would give us antibiotic. So an example with my son with his skin, he's now a teenager and his skin was getting bad. The first thing when I took him to the GP is they said, just use face washes and whatever. We were using the face washes. He's breaking out. It's getting worse. Back home, they gave us antibiotics to further help him with his acne and his bad skin. So what happened now is I had to advocate for my son. I had to explain and push for that to be able to get the extra that we wanted. It wasn't just natural what they would jump to. So you really got to speak up for yourself with your GP. So just keep that in mind as well. I think once you've got registered, and I've shared a little bit around how you get to your specialists and stuff like that. It's all via your GPs. Maybe just talking around the specialist. So an example of when I went to go see my GP for my cancer treatment, and they had to refer me to an oncologist. He refers me to the oncologist. What happens is I don't get the details and contact the oncologist and make the appointment. He does it all online. It goes through to the oncologist that he's now allocated to me that's funded by state. I had to wait for that oncologist or oncologist rooms to get back to me with a date of when I could go see him for the first consult. So that was what was a little bit different. It also did take a little while. It probably took about a couple of weeks to get them to notify me of when the appointment would be, and it probably took about 2 months to get that appointment with that oncologist. But it was waiting on them to come back to me. Okay, it wasn't me contacting them to try to say, hey, this is my diary, this is when I'm available, let's get an appointment. It was waiting for them to come back to me. And when they come back to you, they come back to you with a date and say, okay, your oncologist is able to see you on X date at X time. So it's kind of like you move everything around and make it happen. Otherwise, you lose that appointment and then you wait for them to come back with a next date for the next appointment. So you take what you get. That was going through state. And then once I got to meet with that oncologist and he saw me for the first time in that consult, he wanted more tests done. So he would then send me to get an MRI test done. And then what would happen is, again, he would contact the guys for the MRI at the hospital, and that I would wait for them to come back to me with a date of when it was available. I couldn't choose. It was, well, when I say I couldn't choose, they tell you, you can come do your MRI on this date at this time. If that suits you, be there. If not, we'll come back to you with another date. Okay, it wasn't like I could meet with them to choose the dates. So this is going through state. You just kind of had to take what you could get. Also, what I had to bear in mind is where I am with my GP to go to the oncologist. The oncologist was about a 30-minute drive more south, because that's where the nearest oncologist was that had availability to take me on. So I had to drive another 30 minutes south to get to that oncologist. Once I met with him, he referred me for an MRI at a hospital, which was like another hour in the other direction, with the date that I could get that MRI. So you can get the support that you need through the health system publicly, but it sometimes does mean there's a little bit of a wait. And it does mean sometimes it's a bit of an inconvenience that you've got to travel a little bit to get that care wherever you can find it. So it's not as convenient as private healthcare back in South Africa that I can relate to, where because I had the private care, I could contact them, I could make the appointment, I could find a time that suited me, and it would move along a lot quicker. Whereas here, it was more going through state. You take what you can get, you follow the process, and make yourself available so that you can actually move through it. And it did take a little bit longer, but it still got done. So I still got an oncologist. He did see me. He did send me for the MRIs. So it did happen. It was just, you have to follow the process here. So that's another thing you have to get your mind around. Blood tests, maybe that's another note to talk about. Blood tests here are fully covered by the state or by government. So there will be test labs for blood. So if you go to your GP and he wants you to get blood tests, or you go to a specialist and wants you to get blood tests, they do it all online, and they just tell you to go to your nearest blood test lab to go get the test done. You'll go to the lab, join the queue, and you'll get a nurse take the blood, looks it up all online. You don't walk around with pieces of paper or anything like that. They can see, oh, this doctor referred you, you're getting X bloods done. They do the bloods, the results get then sent back to the doctor, whatever. What you will also do, apps again. You will have access to an app, which is not only where you can make all your appointments with your GP and everything that's allocated to you, or any doctor that is available at your GP practice that you're allocated to or registered with, but you can also see all your results and all your communication around everything that's related to you and your medical. So if you go for bloods, your blood results will be put onto that app, as well as obviously sent to your doctor, and your doctor or whoever requested them will get back to you with feedback. So just bearing that in mind with the bloods and everything as well. I think I've spoken through, I'm just looking at my list, so I'm trying not to forget anything. Oh, maybe another thing to talk on. Okay, so we've spoken about the GP, we've spoken about getting registered with the GP. I've given you an example of how it works, getting appointments via your GP with a specialist, how the specialist in state will come back to you. You take the dates that you can get with them, how they do the blood tests, how they do the MRI tests, for example. Maybe I could talk to you a little bit more about when I went to my GP and I had to go to a specialist, but it was funded out of my private medical. Again, he referred me to the specialist. The specialist, I had to wait for them to contact me, but it was quicker when they contacted me. And then when they contacted me, they speak to me and ask for dates, so I could be a little bit more picky with my calendar on when I wanted dates. And when I had to actually go in for the procedure, which was a colonoscopy, again, it happened quite quickly. It was all covered by the medical. They did all the claims and everything directly with the medical, pre-approvals, everything for me. So it was really easy, and it was quite quick when it went through private. But it still had to go via my GP to go to a specialist to then be allocated and come back. Thereafter, the follow-ups with your specialist, then you can contact the specialist directly for any follow-ups. You don't have to go via GP, because now you've already been registered and referred by a GP for an existing case, and so you carry on. But that was quite quick. So maybe just to make that reference as well. Another point that I also wanted to bring up, and I touched on it earlier, was the ACC. So your AC is your accidental cover for any accidental injuries that come. So when you get paid a salary here and you're a salary owner, you will be contributing towards ACC, which is a national insurance for accidental cover. So it's Accidental Compensation Corporation, I think is what it stands for, and a portion of your salary will go towards that. So what that'll be used for, and the examples we've been able to use it for, one was with my son. He was at school, and I think he was either walking, running back towards the car, and he tripped and fell on the pavement or the sidewalk, and he split open his lip or something like that. So when that happened, that my wife picked him up from school and then took him through to emergency. Side note, with emergency, as much as you register for your GP that you're allocated to and registered with now, what you want to do in your first week or two of being here in country is you need to do a little bit of homework in your area and see where your local emergency services are. And when I say emergency services, I'm meaning emergency 24-hour clinic service. So some GPs will have an emergency service where if an emergency happens, like my son falling or a kid breaking their arm or running a fever or whatever, you can go to them and wait for emergency. They will do a triage at the emergency, proper triage, where they will look at high priority first. So if you come in and you've got a high fever and a cough and whatever, but you don't have a doctor's appointment, but you feel you're at the point you have to go to emergency to see a doctor, they'll put you in the queue and you'll sit and have to wait. But if somebody comes in with a broken arm or something like that, which is more critical, they'll be moved up the list. So it's not first come, first serve. It's based on triage. So you could wait hours at the emergency depending on what is actually wrong with you and what is actually happening that day with the emergency. So be careful with the emergency, but you do need to know where your closest emergency services are. Like for us, we have got the GP that we registered with, which is literally 5 minutes down the road. They do have an emergency services side, but it's only at certain times of day. So I know if it's after 8 o'clock at night or different times on the weekend, they're not available. So if an emergency happened, either you phone your 111, which is like your 911 type thing, for an ambulance to come help you and paramedics and take you to the nearest hospital, or if you're going to do it yourself and get them to a 24/7 hospital, know where the nearest 24/7 availability of emergency services are. So for us, it is North Shore Hospital, so it's a little bit of a drive, probably about a 20-30 minute drive away from us. But we know if it falls outside of where our local GP's emergency is, we know we'd have to drive down to the hospital. Sorry. So just keep that in mind. You've got to think of where your 24 emergency is as well until, so not only registering for the GP, but knowing where that emergency services are. So if you need it, you can go for it. So getting back to the ACC, so when my son fell and tripped and fell, my wife took him through to the closest emergency. It was during the times that the GP's emergency services was open, and they helped with getting him all sorted out. Things to note with ACC, what they will do is they will open up a case with ACC saying, okay, it's an ACC case because he tripped and he fell and it's covered by the ACC fund or insurance by state. So everything will be covered and paid for by ACC. They will register it with a number. It'll go against your MHI number, everything like that. So it'll be an ACC case that gets registered. They are very good. Well, in our experience, they're very good with that. The care that my wife got, my son got was phenomenal. They're also very empathetic. They really actually genuinely care and try not only look after my son, but look after the mom who could be panicked and whatever else. So they were fantastic. So that is a big ups. I mean, a lot of people complain about the medical system and everything here, but I can tell you the experience we've had, it's actually really good. And even the state that I had to go through, it may be slow, but it still happens and it still works. I know back home that if I had to go through state, nothing would happen and you'd probably just die. You needed private medical insurance. Yes, the private is potentially better than it is here with state, but you can't compare the state back home to here. It is way, way better. Getting back to the ACC claim, so that was my son putting in the ACC claim. Everything was covered for his split lip, getting that all sorted out, any medication, anything that comes from that, it all got covered by ACC, even although he was a minor. I've even done an ACC case where I hurt myself at the gym. I hurt my knee. I tore my meniscus in my knee. And that I thought would be, in inverted commas, self-inflicted pain because I'd done it at the gym. But even although it happened at the gym, again, when I went to my GP, again, going through my GP, I said to him, hey, I've hurt my knee. This is what happened. He said, where did it happen? I said, it was at gym when I was doing certain exercise, weight training, blah, 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 blah. And the doctor said, oh, that's an ACC case. So that was also a learning thing for me. It's not just in ACC doesn't mean only in a public area when something accidental happens. It's any accidental thing that happens, even if it is in a private gym, for example. So that was also covered by ACC. All the physio that I had done for my knee was covered by the ACC. All the, what do you call it? If I needed to go for surgery or anything like that, luckily I didn't, physio sorted out, they said it would be covered by ACC. That said, even when I went for the physio under the ACC, which was covered, there were certain fees that physio charged for admin and over and above that wasn't covered by ACC. I'd have to pay that out of pocket. So it would have been like $45 or whatever else. But I had private medical, which was almost like the gap. The private medical could then cover what ACC didn't cover. So you can keep that in mind as well. But ACC is something that is covered here that you pay towards as part of your salary, and that's a government cover that you get here as well. So ACC was one that I wanted to talk about. Okay, so I've spoken about the registering of the GPs. I've spoken about registering for the dental for the kids that are covered 18 years and older, and just the time that it takes to get that sorted out. Oh, that's one thing that I didn't bring up. Looking at my notes here, another thing you want to do when you're back in your home country, if you want to go see your doctor first before you get here, just before you get on the plane to arrive in New Zealand, what we did is we saw our doctor and we got them to prescribe a whole lot of medication, be it colds and flu medication, cough mixtures, painkillers, just getting a good collection of all the meds that you'd need for day-to-day general medical care of your family. We went to our doctor and got prescribed a whole lot of that medication. We got prescribed at least 3 months worth of medication, so it was a lot of medication per person in the family, and brought that across with us on the plane, on our luggage. What you need to make sure you do have, though, is make sure that you've got scripts for everything that you are bringing across. Have copies and the original scripts with you so that you can show that it's prescribed by a doctor. But what that meant for us is when we first got here, you've got to go through this whole process of landing, getting into a home, getting the kids in school, whatever else, registering with the GPs, getting familiar with the GPs, getting private medical insurance if it's part of your budget and you can afford off the bat, whatever, but getting all that done. In those first few weeks, especially if you just got off the plane and everything like that, and also with the little kiddies that start integrating here with other kiddies and stuff, you're bound to get some sort of bug or some sort of virus or something like that, be it from the travel here on the plane, be it from when you land here, be it from just your immune system because you're stressed, whatever. It happened to us. We got very sick. I'm so grateful we got a lot of the different meds. Also, we got meds that we know work for our family. So when we're sick and we've got a cold or flu or whatever else, we know what different medications work to help with those symptoms, to make it more bearable until it works through your system. So we had the meds with us to be able to use. Once you arrive here, over and above the time it takes to get registered with the GPs and everything like that, to be able to get prescribed meds and everything to help you. And as I said, they underprescribe as well. So you even got to fight for meds, not fight for, but advocate for yourself, for your kids to get more meds or what you're used to getting back home. So having your own stash and your own meds that work really help in those first few months of being here. So I really do recommend that. It did help us. Also, you don't know the different brands of meds here that have the same stuff in it. So be it ibuprofen that it's got in it, or be it that it's, I don't know, whatever other meds your meds have in it, you wouldn't know the brands here. So it takes a bit of time to get used to it and know what actually works for you, the new substitution, the new brands and everything. So over and above trying to talk to friends and trying to find out what does work and what they've learned since they've been here, it does help having that first 3 months with you. So go to your doctor, try get those. That is definitely something that helps as well. Okay, so trying to make sure I don't go down a rabbit hole and squirrel all over the place and so much information I'm trying to get through. GPs is a big one, registering with them and the process of getting registered and finding one that's local to where you stay and that actually is taking registrations is important. Trying to get your kids registered with dental because they're 18 years and younger are covered. So you want to get them rental. That takes a while. Well, it did for us in Auckland, so it took a little while trying to get that done. Spoken a little bit about ACC, spoken a little bit about your specialists. I've spoken about specialists going through states and specialists going through private medical care. So that's the two things that you would want to also know. I've explained that you don't go straight to specialists, so that everything needs to be funneled through your GPs. That's why it's important to get registered with them. Also, a key point, remembering for emergency services, so anything emergency-wise, 24/7, make sure you find out where that is nearest to where you're staying, so that you know where to go. It also means that if you aren't registered with a doctor straight off the bat and you had to go to emergency services straight away, at least you know where to go. Okay, because in that panic state or when something's just happened, that's the last thing you want to do. Is not, where do I go? Because you don't know where to go. So just find that out up front. So those are the things that you would want to do there. I think that is a lot of what I wanted to go through today. I think maybe ending off with just some of the tips for clarification. So first thing is making sure that you're registered with your GP for your area, making sure that don't leave it too late. Okay, rather get registered with your GP sooner than later, knowing that they're going to do a lot of that registration online. It'll guide you through what you need to get registered and whether you qualify to be registered for state cover or not. But make sure you get registered with your GP, because everything gets channeled through your GP, be it to whichever specialist that you need to go to, and what isn't covered. So important to get that done up front. Knowing that dental is not covered for adults here. It is for your kids 18 years and younger, but you do need to register. So do your homework with where you register for your kids. Like I said, up here in Auckland, it took us a little while. It took about 6 months to get that registration done. So try get that done, and it doesn't cover everything when it comes to dental, like I'm talking braces, orthodontistry. It doesn't cover all of that. So that's where you would want to start looking into your private cover, but that does come down to budget as well. So you'd want to look into that. Also remembering maybe trying to get a whole lot of meds up front with scripts that you bring across, because it's going to take a little while for you to get used to the brands and what works here for your family. Advocate for yourself and your family with the doctors, because they underprescribe here. So you've got to push for what you actually want with the doctors here. So don't be surprised. Knowing the GPs do a little bit more than what we used to back home. Also with the nurses, sometimes they'll push you to the nurses that do quite a bit of stuff as well here. So that takes a little bit of a mindset change and getting used to in the process here. So that works a bit differently. Also remember, when you get assigned your doctor with the GP that you register with, you don't necessarily have to go to that doctor. So you can look at all the GPs at that practice, and you can choose any doctor that's available. So you don't have to go to the doctor that's allocated to you or assigned to you. So just keep that in mind as well. Everything is done with apps, so you'll start getting the apps to book online with your doctors, seeing your blood tests and results that are done online. Remembering blood tests are all covered by state, but again, all paperless, but gets channeled by the doctor or the specialist that asks for that. But I think that's really what I wanted to go through today. It's different. The healthcare is not necessarily exactly the same as what you used to, or it's not what I'm used to back home, but it does work. It's just a bit of a process in trying to getting registered, getting an understanding of where you need to register for everything. So good rule of thumb is starting with your local GP. Get registered with them, and then they'll push you all in the right directions of where you need to go. So I really hope this has helped a little bit and given you a little bit more insight into the healthcare system here and how it works, and things that you need to consider when you're coming across, and what you need to prioritize getting done first, and what is and isn't covered. I'm sure there's a lot of things I have forgotten to mention, but I hope at least with what I have has given you a good starting point and a good first thinking about of what you need to try get sorted out and done, so that you can make sure that the healthcare is sorted out for you and your family, and maybe some tips of what you need to bring along, and etc., to get the ball rolling on all of this. If you feel this has helped and given a bit of value, please share it with anybody else that you feel would benefit from listening to this podcast. And I also ask you to go to my YouTube channel. I've got Soft Landing NZ on my YouTube. It's my YouTube channel where I share a lot of not only other podcasts, but I'm starting to create a whole lot of other content and videos to try and help people and immigrants that are coming to New Zealand. I'm trying to help you learn from me my experiences, so that you can have a softer landing. So please go to my YouTube channels, Soft Landing NZ, subscribe, put on the notification so you'll get notified when I add any new content, so that I can try and help you with your journey The whole goal here is to make New Zealand our home, help us settle, just make it easier. I know it's really hard immigrating. This is one of the most difficult things I've ever done in my life. And I just want to try and make it easier for others out there that are doing the exact same thing. Learn from me, do better, and let's make New Zealand our home. So with that, I hope you keep safe. You must keep well. Until I speak to you in my next episode. Keep well. Cheers.